Good evening and welcome back to the Nerds of Legend podcast. I'm Brendan with my compatriots Joel and Ben. We are continuing our journey through Norse mythology today with the deaths of Baldur and Hod. Now, these are two of the Pantheon that we'll be covering today. Our stage Joel has done some research. He has some actual sources here, and he'll be starting us off with the history of these two Norse deities, and we'll break it down into some discussion and yelling from the rafters. Bill, take it away.
All right. What was interesting about this story, I'm going to do a little blurb of myself, and then I'm going to get right into what I found. Both of these gods were brothers. They were both sons of Odin and Frigg, and appear nowhere else in other than the connection to this legend that I have found. Like, I am by no means claiming to be a historian or a folklore specialist, but...
And I did a little background research on Baldur, too, for last week, when you didn't get to him, and he's like, they're not fully clear, like, he's often kind of like a love god, like a god of love sort of thing, but it's also hinted that he's also like a war god as well, so... He's
an Aesir, yes, yeah. Absolutely. He is a member of the Aesir, because if you remember from last week when we discussed the Pantheon, the Norse gods are split into war and more like everything else. It's like, so the Aesir is one side and the Vanir is the other side. Odin and Frigg are hard members of the Aesir. I mean, Odin is the war god of all war gods. So you go back to what he's the god of, which is actually really, really fun. So I couldn't find anything that said it once. I went through the Prose Edda. I went through a couple things. So what I found was by Professor Rudolf Simic, who is, I believe, currently a professor of Nordic studies at the University of Sydney, said that the Old English name for Baldur was Bealdag and could be broken down into two words, fire and dag. Day, Simic claims that it could be interpreted as shining day. And then if you take the proper Norse, which is the term Baldur, which is know you are, B-A-L-D-R, it translates to brave, defiant, also in other terms, lord or prince. And the Proto-Germanic, Beloraz, these are all terms for Baldur depending on what region you are in. It translates as hero or prince. So the languages at the time, from Old Norse to Old English, Proto-Germanic, Old Norse, and Old English, all agreed that Baldur, at least part of his name was the Bold. So, and I've heard tellings and like modern stories, you know, like you get the Rick Riordan stories and things like that. And if any of you guys, if any of you guys were really like into really, really bad movies, or really bad series, there's a phenomenal series, and by bad I mean like low budget, just quirky as shit.
Campy.
Yeah, campy. There is a series out of New Zealand called The Almighty Johnsons, where a group of just regular ass New Zealand people are possessed by the spirits of the Norse gods. So anyways, and Baldur is played by a guy who is constantly reborn every day, and he exists to surf and plow box and get stoned. And it's amazing. So
I briefly thought you were talking about like agriculture. I'm like, oh wait.
Yeah, no. He exists to have sex and get stoned and surf, because one of the legends of Baldur is after he dies, he is destined to be resurrected following Ragnarok.
Yeah, he's also
one piece, and this is my own assumption. It's kind of like Baldur was like the Norwegian Prince Charming. So I kind of wonder, in a predominantly oral tradition, is a lot of the stories is like, and then Baldur came to save her, you know, because he's the son, he's a prince of the god and the queen, and he's all the names describe him as essentially being like beautiful, noble, princely. So I mean, that's where I got it. Did you have something, Ben?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna add. I recently listened to this audiobook. It's called The Gospel of Loki, and is really good because it's on sort of like Norse mythology told from the point of view of Loki, and it kind of goes into his like sort of like motivations as to like why he did things.
Did it have like a background track of like early 2000s emo music?
No, it did not.
He's just like, my dad doesn't know or doesn't understand me.
No, well, so like the way they went with the track of, instead of Loki being one of the Loki being like one of the Jotun, they kind of went almost like more a different route where he's a member of Pandemonium, that was like essentially a captured like demon of chaos.
You know, that would make so much more sense.
Yeah. That like basically Odin tricked into taking a corporeal form and then like marked him with a rune so that he couldn't like return to Pandemonium. And it actually
that actually makes so much more sense than, because the giants were always so dumb. Yeah. Like they're always like flummoxed by put Thor to dress.
Except no, at the same time, it's like the giants, like in like Loki's thing is like the giants simultaneously like they get tricked by Loki all the time, but they also like are like get one over on the Aesir like all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
see, like
it's interesting because it establishes like why Loki hates Bald, like caused. We'll get to the story later, but like what like gets to the root of like why Loki caused Baldur's death, as opposed to just like like he seems to do it on a whim in the
that's
Norse
what I was going to
mythology.
say is. The one that I took from the Prose Edda actually has, it seems like there's no fucking reason why he doesn't. He's just like, well, this will be a good time. Murder.
Yeah, it kind of like fills in the blanks and is like, hey, Loki did this because like he's like, even when Loki tries to do good things, he gets like, he still doesn't get accepted, and like Baldur just exists as this pretty boy that everyone loves.
Mm-hmm.
And like, but doesn't do anything, and Loki's always trying to get in the gods' good graces, and they still eventually go back to treating him like dirt again. So
that is a common thing. But he does also seem to start 90% of his problems as well. So,
so if this were a John Hughes movie, Baldur would have a sweater tied around his neck and have a Ferrari in high school.
Probably an ascot too.
Got a best friend named Chaz.
Easily.
Yeah,
an Insta. He'd have an Instagram for sure.
Yeah.
He has.
Yeah, you're mixing timelines. We just lost half of our people that knew exactly what you're talking about. You're like Instagram in 1985. Chaz would never have that.
That's how rich he is.
Because I got time traveling money.
He had a hall, like a lodge that was like the finest ever, right? And he had a boat that was like the nicest boat. Like
Loki gave him.
Yeah, with Loki gave him. So he's very much like the picturesque.
Baldur's that guy. Okay, my bad. No, because Baldur's also described as being very kind.
Yep.
Chaz is never kind. He's kicking he's literally like just
Baldur
the worst.
Baldur hangs with Chaz.
Yeah. He's the guy that takes the glasses off.
You have to understand,
girl.
he's okay. He
sometimes
means
just
well.
has bad days, and that's why he beats up the nerd.
So Baldur and Hod are like Chase and Chaz in this John Hughes movie. Both blonde, ascot.
Well, Hod is blind.
I mean, shades.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Thanks for that. I've ever seen.
Thanks for that. That's not horrible. All right, let's knock out the story. We can talk more shit about it. Okay, so in the Prose Edda, which for those of you who don't know about it, it was written in the 13th century by historian Snorri Sturluson. It tells about how Baldur had a dream of his death and that his mother Frigg had the exact same dream. The dream was viewed to be prophetic and called Baldur to slip into a depression. Nobody could handle the fact that Baldur was sad, so Frigg took it on herself.
Nobody wanted Baldur to die. Baldur can't die.
No. It was not even that. It was like nobody wanted him to even be sad. So Frigg took it on a mission to get a promise from every object in the world that it will not harm Baldur. Except mistletoe, because mistletoe was too small to worry about and was non-threatening. Well, there was an interesting piece I pulled out. Go ahead.
I've seen a version where Loki distracts Freya before she can extract the promise as well.
Loki comes up twice in this story.
Yeah,
not counting the tempting part.
There's multiple
Loki comes up
times
twice.
where he can come up. Depends on the version you read, but yeah.
Well, this is the one from the Prose Edda, so that's the one we're taking out of. Now, what's interesting is I found a footnote that I don't know if it has any interest to the story, but there was an associate professor of folklore and Scandinavian studies at Ohio State, Merrill Kaplan. He says that he believes this was thrown in as kind of a message that people are supposed to be careful to not swear legal oaths that may impact the people, young people, because it could end up damaging them later in life. I was like, that's kind of makes sense. Think about all the... But anyways, so shocking to nobody, Loki learns of this and made a spear out of mistletoe. And because it's the Norse gods, throwing stuff at Baldur became the new favorite game of all of the Aesir. But Hod, Baldur's brother, could not do it because he was blind. So Loki's like, I'll help you. Gave him this spear, who he threw it at his brother and killed him. Yeah, completely unintentionally.
I've also seen it be a dart.
Right, and an arrow. So I've seen that one thrown out too.
Yep.
Projectiles in general.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a little bit about Hod. Hod is also very, very little known. He's the brother of Odin, and he's the brother of Hod, brother of Baldur, son of Odin and Frigg, and is blind. The only connections that I have seen from him are connected to the death of Baldur. Mm-hmm. It is said this is a direct.
I believe the gods turn on him in rage and kill him outright.
Actually, I'm going to take that out of the Prose Edda and let you know exactly what was written, because it is the single most convoluted and fucked up revenge story I've come across in a long time. Mm-hmm. So this is Prose Edda about the incident. One of the Aesir is named Hod. He is blind. He is of sufficient strength. But the gods were desired that on no occasion should rise of naming this god, for the work of his hands long be held in memory among gods and men. Loki took the mistletoe and pulled it up and went to the thing, Hodor, standing outside, which was another pronunciation of Hod, Hodor. Mm-hmm. Stood outside the ring of men because he was blind. Then spake Loki to him, Why dost thou not shoot at Baldur? He answered, Because I see not where Baldur is, and for this I am weaponless. Then Loki said, Dost thou also after the manner of other men, and show Baldur honor as the other men do? I will direct thee where he stands. Shoot him with this wand. Hod took the mistletoe and shot at Baldur, being guided by Loki. The shaft flew through Baldur, and he fell dead to the earth. And that was the greatest mischance that has ever befallen among gods and men. Okay, but what's interesting about this, because Baldur did not die in battle, he went to the land of the dishonored dead.
Yep.
There's no Valhalla. There's no anything. He went to hell.
So this is another thing that happens in the Gospel of Loki, is like Loki promised Hel, his daughter, because she had the hots for Baldur, and she was like, I want Baldur. And he's like, I'll get Baldur for you for a favor. And then she was like, fine. And then he basically is like, does it so that Hel can have a boy toy.
It's really fucked up because Hel is like half woman, half completely rotting corpse.
Yep.
Like one half is an unimaginably beautiful woman, and then the other half is like an unimaginably horrifically like fetid corpse. Mm-hmm. So I feel like she probably didn't think that through. She's probably batting way out of her league for the hottest of the gods to be like, listen, from here to here, I'm a 10. From here to here, I'm a negative 300.
No.
I feel like that's really hard. That's a really hard sell. And you got to really have like parental love to be like, yeah, I'm pretty sure you can make that work.
Mm-hmm.
So question for you, Joel.
Mm-hmm.
So the story of Baldur and Hod was covered in the Prose Edda. You said there wasn't a lot of material on this. Is it covered at all in the Poetic Edda, or is it only in the Prose Edda?
I didn't really have the time to go through the Poetic Edda. I would assume so. And if you want, I can go through it just so I can answer that question next week. But right now, I just went through Prose Edda and looked at it.
Different things are covered in the two different Eddas.
Yeah, I would have. Yeah. But I only had the time to go through the one, so.
Yeah, it's not 1-to-1,
mm-hmm.
so.
Right.
Okay.
So then wrapping it up and bringing Loki back into it, Frigg, when Baldur went to hell. That's Hel. Frigg went to beg hell. Also Hel, because that's not confusing.
Helheim.
Yeah. Frigg begged hell to release him, and she agreed that provided all living things weep for Baldur's death, she'd release him. Frigg managed to get everything to do so, save the giantess Thrak, who refused to cry for Baldur, keeping him trapped in hell.
What has he done for me?
Exactly. That is what she said. What has he done for me?
Done for me? Yeah.
Yep. And it is believed that Thrak is Loki in disguise.
Yep.
Okay, so now for the most ridiculous retribution I have ever heard in my entire life. At least for these kind of stories. Is the retribution for Baldur's death. Again, taken from the Prose Edda. It is so looking for a suitable retribution on Hod. Odin consults seers, and they say if you have a child with Rinda or Rindur who's the daughter of the king of the Ruthenians, that child will be your retribution. So Odin, instead of just walking up saying, hey, I'm the Allfather, I need to get it on with you, he impersonates a warrior called Roster and earns like honor in the eyes of the Ruthenians. When then he proceeds to like see Rinda and he's like, so, Dick? She says no. So he just bangs her.
He just does it anyway, okay.
Yeah, he just does it anyway.
How
it says he was twice.
Right? How Viking.
Yeah, so this is where it gets even better. He was turned down by her twice. Then he wrote runes on a piece of bark and touched her with it, causing her to go mad and disguised himself as a medicine woman named Wecha, and who was allowed to see her. When she fell in, the disguised Odin then said he had the medicine to which to cure her, but that it would cause a violent reaction. On Odin's advice, the king let Rinda be tied to her bed, and Odin proceeded to rape her. From the rape was born Vali, who grew to adulthood in one day and killed Hod.
I haven't heard that version before.
Tell me that's not wildly fucked up.
Was he tasked to kill Hod, or was it circumstantial?
No, he just did it. It's his own kid, and he's like, and like everybody's like, oh, Loki obviously fucked with him. He's like, should we beat Loki up? They're like, that's stupid. Let's kill Hod. Yeah. He's a blind guy, and he participated in one activity, and it accidentally killed Loki.
Fuck him. You get a lot of versions of these where like people like kind of fill in the blanks. I've seen other interpretations where basically like the gods all turned on Hod and just like basically
that's the one I heard.
I hadn't heard that one before. That was wild.
And when I heard that, I was like they always have like weird shit happening, you know, like Mimir's a severed head, and the god, whatever his name is,
like just sits in the bottom of a well, you know.
Yeah, and there's the one made of all the spit of the god that knows everything, like that kind of shit.
Yeah,
it's like you're used to the weird shit, but like shockingly, there's very little like sexual assault in there. It's not like the Greek mythology where they're slinging dick all over time, they're transforming into anything and just slamming everybody. This was like shocking for me to realize. Like they're normally more into like
the Norse gods don't like to go like the hubris route, or just
no.
Like, they like to go the like. Usually they just go like, you besmirched my honor, therefore you die. Like they don't go like the gods are gonna like circumvently like punish somebody like in Greco-Roman stuff, where it's just like
it's a very circumstantial and convoluted way,
right,
to send a tricked, deceived person, daddy, to hell. So
yeah. To me, it was really weird. Like, I was not prepared for that one. Like, I honestly, when I thought the vengeance, I really thought it was the one Ben said. Like, they're going to come up there and stab the shit out of him, or like
how could you?
They're real big fans. I found out in the stories that I've come across, are real big fans.
Limb from limb.
Tearing people, yeah. Like, they got a lot of juice and tearing people limb from limb, but they
because a lot of times, like the god, if you're a god, you can come back from that by just eating one of Idun's apples. So
yeah. But, like, it literally sounds like these two minor players, like, showed up. One was like, ooh, he's pretty. Oh, he died.
So I wonder,
and then he comes with this convoluted plan.
So I almost wonder if this is, like, almost like the mythology was born from, like, this is a long stretch. And it's, like, I almost wonder if, like, back when this, like, came out, it was, like, because a lot of times these myths are like metaphors for something else that's happening historically. I wonder if this is like some sort of like metaphor from like there's like a cult of Baldur that like gets like taken out by a cult of Hod, and then like
there again, looking through Hod, he's never had any worshippers.
Right. Or I'm saying, what if there was, and they just like fucking wiped out this other tribe for like fucking with Baldur, and then like Odin's like, all right, Hod,
I'm gonna bang somebody and create a murdering child.
No, I'm just like, I sometimes I wonder if like some of this stuff is just like metaphor for like something else. Like this tribe went after this tribe and like wiped them out, but like that tribe was actually buds with this other tribe, so then they went and wiped them out. You know, like because you have a lot of these like cults of Odin or cults of Loki or cult of Thor and stuff like this at this time. So I wonder if this is almost more like metaphoric for like stuff that's like happening in the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah
it's sort of like, you know, there's a tie into mythological Genesis stories and ideas of apocalypse being shaped by the biome that a civilization is in.
Absolutely.
Because it happened with like Egypt, where a lot of times like a god would fall out of favor, and then it's like, oh, you find out that like, oh, this pharaoh decided he liked Isis better than so and so, and then they just like fucking wipe out that entire cult. So then it comes in the mythology that, you know, this god killed that god or whatever. But,
I mean, we're seeing it today with like the different factions who just all within like Christianity and Islam. You see the different ones are like they believe their god is one way and the one is the other ones, and we're seeing them. I mean,
like
it's
rewrite history to fit the narrative.
And you kind of wonder if in 1,000 years are people going to be like, man, you should have seen, like those Catholics were taken out by those evangelicals.
Well, it's like if you look at like Revelation, and like all of like the book of Revelations is like sort of like an allegory for the trials and tribulations that like modern Christians were doing it, and they couched it in allegory to like basically be like, hey, like basically, you know, the beast was Nero, you know.
That was what I was raised in. I was raised with this is all prophetic, and then in actuality,
you find out this is how we can talk about this without getting fucking stabbed.
I mean, that makes sense too. If like the king of the region, and back to the Norwegian, to the Norse, is that does make sense. Is to sit there and write these over the top stories, to explain why
my God's better
that
than
Jarl
your
over
God.
there is why that Jarl over there is a piece of shit. Because you're not going to go over there and be like, let me tell you why Jarl Smith is a piece of shit. You know, you're like, maybe I'm going to stop, because they didn't ask a whole lot of questions back then.
There's something to be said about that, because I mean, history is written by the victors. All of our accounts of certain.
So the cult of Loki lost.
That's the thing. That's the thing.
It didn't really, because I feel like Loki is probably more popular now than he ever has been.
Yeah.
Well, that's because we like shit starters. This is America. That's how we like people that stir the pot.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody loves a hero, but villains can be just as notorious.
Yeah.
And,
Doctor Doom is fucking amazing.
I mean, Doctor Doom was the influence on Darth Vader. So his appearance, his cowl, his silhouette influenced Star Wars, and the hubris that he wields his power with, and the damnation of his mother and everything is very Faustian. So you have tie-ins to stories of power and damnation. I mean, you could even think of it as it's a tie-in to Gilgamesh. So when you have very basic story themes that are all-encompassing and involve power and death and life and metaphysical concepts, I mean, Jack Kirby knew all about that. His stories, the New Gods and the Inhumans, and all of his stories were, I wouldn't say necessarily overtly biblical, but deific in nature and certainly in power and scope. And the Norse gods are no different. The Norse gods cover everything. They cover the end of the world. They cover weather. They cover all the realms of reality. When stories are large in scope, the characters are just as bombastic, and you can definitely see that the popularity that Thor has even today, and the amount of stories pertaining to him and how powerful he was, probably had a direct correlation to his adherence. And you know what? Even if the cult of Loki got their ass kicked a few times, there was probably something to be said for his deviousness and his low-handed behavior that probably kept the story going along.
Yeah. Well, and it's just like Loki's always like that element of chaos that you just like can't explain. Oh, why would they do that? You know, it's like,
or like, what are you trying to gain out of it? The number one thing with all of Loki's stories is you're like,
it's in the help section of your Alexa app.
and Alexa just started talking to me. Alexa,
the curse of Alexa.
Yeah, like, she. I'd say
awesome.
That's why I really like this Gospel of Loki book, which I might suggest it for future, is because it's like it very much sort of like encapsulates that, like, why did Loki do the things that he did, and a lot of it was like even when he'd like do good things, like even when he'd like try to help out, like he'd still get shit on. So like he was never felt like he belonged. And then you have this sort of like theme of like eventually like Loki hits a breaking point where he decides, you know what? Fuck these people. I'm going to take them down. So like basically there's that point where he brings the gods all of their like sacred artifacts. You know, he brings Gungnir to Odin. He brings Freya's necklace. He brings like 6 different objects, and like this still the gods like, you're muted.
Sorry, he brought Mjolnir, didn't he?
So he brought Mjolnir, Gungnir, Freya's necklace, Baldur's boat.
Yeah, he's got a boat, and then he's got
there's 2 more. There's a boar.
God, that... Even Baldur gets a boat. That's what you give.
Yeah,
to
the boat that you can
brat.
fold up into basically a boat that you can fold up into like the size of like a little tiny one.
I've played D&D. I know what a collapsible boat is.
Yeah, and then
I've had that magic item in my artifact.
There's a golden boar that I can't remember. There's a golden boar that I can't remember if it's just like shit's gold or if it's like you can kill it and get the gold and then it'll be reborn the next day or something like that.
I thought that was Odin's ring. That like he could wear it, shake his hand.
So there's and then Odin's ring where he can just like constantly like make new things. But like basically Brock, who's one of the dwarves, he's mad because Loki went to the sons of Ivaldi to commission these objects for the gods instead of Brock's shop, and Brock is basically like, fuck you, I'm gonna make better shit. If my shit's better and the gods decide, I get your head.
I remember that one because he cheated by turning into a horsefly and biting him between the eyes every time he tried to do something.
Yeah, but the gods still decide that Brock's gifts are better. So then like he's like, all right, I get his head then. He's like, and then Loki's like, well, you had just wanted my head, so you have to be able to take my head without taking my neck too.
That's like a but actually moment. You can actually see Loki push his glasses up and like, but actually, there's no way to cut my head off without taking part of my neck, and that's against the rules.
So then, as
fucking nerd,
as punishment, Brock's like, all right, then I can do whatever I want with your head. So then he sews Loki's mouth shut.
That's an appropriate.
And all the gods laugh at him. So then Loki decides, you know what? Fuck these bitches. I'm gonna bring them all down, because even after I bring all these glorious gifts to them, they still decide to mock me.
I'm just saying, like, they responded on 10 every fucking time. Like, there is no such thing as the middle path. Like,
There's zero chill ever.
Not at all.
Loki
It is
caught a
all
lot
or
of
nothing.
He caught a lot of heat.
Yeah.
Yeah, unnecessary.
So many times.
I was actually going to discuss Baldur's presence in Marvel Comics because that's the first time I had seen Baldur.
Okay.
I had mentioned earlier, like Jack Kirby, when Marvel really started taking the throne, if you will, from DC in the Silver Age. A lot of the relatability of Marvel Comics was the human-like nature. I mean, Spidey was a teen. He had to deal with girls. He had to deal with being a superhero.
Yeah.
He had to deal with everything.
That's all we've talked about, like how we prefer Marvel because it's like you have these flawed people that are just trying to be good versus like like DC has these paragons of people that like get power.
Yeah, and DC was also an amalgam of a lot of different themes because they were different companies. Yeah. Well, you had Lee and Kirby in the 60s sort of had this vision. And so Jack Kirby pulled a lot of biblical style stories. Eventually when he went to DC with New Gods, when he did the Inhumans, he helped a lot with with the Marvel method working with Lee. The Norse gods, in a very strange twist, are almost made more human. Like they're almost made less powerful than they are in like the prose Edda or the poetic Edda. And they're almost made more relatable and more human, so that we can more easily relate to them. And so you actually see more often than not a power limitation in the Marvel comics with the Norse gods, just so you can sort of relate to them more.
See, that's the other thing that I like about we've talked about this, but like with Norse gods versus like the classics, like the Norse gods are people that can fuck up. They're people that they're like without the they're basically like people that are like immortal. Like they have crazy abilities, but at the same time they can make mistakes or whatever. They can be fooled. They can be, but like in the classical like Greek Greco-Roman mythology, a lot of times it's like they're not full on omnipotent or anything, but like they're also like
they're very fallible.
Yeah. The thing with the Greek pantheon is that it's almost like they refuse to accept responsibility.
Yes.
It's almost like
hubris.
There's a hubris of Zeus and his very, very open marriage.
Well, I mean, like even like if you look at it that way, it's like the Norse gods they're Christian biblical stuff that they have like there's like revelations or whatever, but like. The Norse are like one of the few like pantheons that actually are like, this is what happens at the end of the world.
Right.
Like Greco-Roman is just like, nope, we ain't going anywhere. What are you talking about?
There's a lot of hubris of them being we are never going anywhere. We are flawless.
Yeah.
There's certainly a very definitive Norse idea about the end. There's the stories of cataclysm.
Well, the whole point is that it's cyclical, but yes.
Right. Yeah. Cyclical. The cyclical nature, other than reincarnation, you see the idea of the serpent consuming its own tail.
Yeah.
Right.
I always love the Ouroboros.
This has happened before. It's going to happen again.
Right.
Yeah,
it's primarily a Norse feature, and it's sort of like, hey, the idea of fate. We talked earlier about watching, I think it's Eggers, the Norseman, and how the struggle of Björnulf is his taken name in that film is does he go off and the Bearman? Yeah. Does he go off and live his own future? Or is he indebted to his fate, and can he not steer from it? And that's such a recurring theme with Norse mythology. I think it's really funny that in Marvel comics they sort of not necessarily diverge from that because they've used Ragnarok several times and in the comics, but they're free to sort of be reinterpreted in a way that's so publicly available. Baldur had his own series. It's really? in Marvel it's spelled ER. He's called Baldur the Brave. Yeah, I first saw him in the Walter Simonson run in the 80s. I was not present. I read these later on, but I was drawn to the art, and that era of the comics has since been collected into omnibuses. So that was the first example of Thor that I read. I got really into Jason Aaron's initial run with Gore, the God Butcher, as well. But
that was a great series. We could talk about that one later.
Yeah,
because that was fucking awesome.
Yeah. It ended with the war. Aaron's run ended with War of the Realms, but his initial Gore the God Butcher run was so good it was adapted loosely for Thor: Love and Thunder. That's a if the comics do well, they get turned into movies. That's what we're seeing. But yeah, Baldur features prominently in the Simonson run. He's shown as a pretty boy. I believe he's a relative in the comics of Thor and Loki. Yeah, he's half brother to Thor in the comics. He hangs out with the Warriors 3, which are these are probably the most prominent characters in the comic. Are Malekith, the Warriors 3, Baldur,
Sif, I think.
Sif, yeah, and then Thor and Loki, and also the dude with is it Scrag, the guy with the M16s and the.
There's they show up in the first movie. Sif. I can't think of what the three are, but
that starts at Volstagg, and then the other two. But yeah, Baldur is more prominently displayed in the comics, and I remember seeing him in the Simonson run. He's the brave. He's a pretty boy. I believe he's tricked and killed in the comics. I think they changed the name. Let's see here. It's been quite some time. Baldur is killed by they call him Hoder in the comic.
That's the same Holder is another name for Hod, yeah.
Yeah. So he's tricked. Hoder is tricked by Loki into killing Baldur in the comics as well.
That's really his only purpose. The only time Hod had anything else that I've ever seen anything else is in that show, The Almighty Johnsons, where he was the god of winter and darkness. Yeah. Where he was like really badass. I mean, he was always so really, really mopey all the time. And Baldur, who was literally reborn every day, kept being like, "Remember that time you killed me, you piece of shit?" And then he'd be like, "Oh, I did kill you." He's like, "Yeah, that sucked." And then he's like, "But you come back every day. That doesn't matter. It's still uncool." Me. Yeah. Honestly, it's such a great show. It's so stupid.
I'll have to check it out.
It's fantastic.
There's another modern interpretation of Baldur that I thought was very interesting. Was God of War. So
that was the most accurate depiction of. It's so
yeah. So it was interesting. So like in God of War 2015, 2013,
Ragnarok, God of War Ragnarok.
No.
Use the proper title. God of War Ragnarok is the best.
No,
Ragnarok 4. I'm wrong. Sorry for being arrogant.
I haven't watched the most recent. I haven't played the most recent one.
You played the 4th at my house. Like I know
Ragnarok is. So there's another. God of War out.
It's God of War 4.
These games are too new. There's no emulators to run them because they're so new. So
God of War reboot 4, sure. God of War 4, which is I've seen it done as like God of War 2015 or whatever. Or
no, I know. I'm just fucking with you, Ben, because I haven't yet. We've been nice to you the whole time. I haven't made fun of you one time.
It's been really nice. You know that?
It's been really nice.
I've been able
to say things and not get made fun of. It's been great. But now,
just hug yourselves from me through the screen. Just do it.
Okay.
Do it now.
You're like, I brought my own mistletoe dart.
Anyway,
dramatic there, Ben.
So you have Baldur show up, and he like wants to fuck with Kratos, and Kratos like beats the shit out of him, and then Baldur beats the shit out of him back, and then Kratos like.
That was a great scene.
Brutally breaks his fucking neck and throws him down to the bottom of a very deep chasm.
Ouch.
Right at the beginning.
God of War is rife with deep chasms.
So like
they're just readily available for him to toss shit dramatically into.
Well, they made one by fighting, so
I remember that where they kept like pushing the world apart in that one.
And so
I'm gonna go play God of War.
Is by promising that by Freya's making all these things promise that they would never like hurt him, he also is basically like cannot feel pleasure
or anything
from anything. So he can't feel anything ever again. So like he's constantly
it's like the same reason in Metallo. You remember that DC villain who he wanted to fight Superman, so they made his whole body metal, and he lost his mind because he can't feel anything.
Yeah,
he's powered by kryptonite, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So like the whole thing is like Baldur hates his life, wants to die, so he can feel something finally, and blames his mother Freya for what she did. And then, like, it all turns into this whole thing where he has all this shit happen, and he can't feel anything because nothing can like touch him anymore, because she basically
except for mistletoe and tattoo needles, because he was fucking inked up all over the place.
Yeah, so they can touch him, they can hurt it, but he heals instantly and doesn't feel anything from it. So you have these wild scenes where like Kratos will just like bust the shit out of him, and then eventually he'll just be like, and then like all of the injuries will go in, and Kratos.
I did like that scene where I did like the scene in that game where like healing looked a lot like taking a really hard dump, like really bearing down on the bowl, you know.
It's a strikingly different perspective of Baldur and Marvel. I had mentioned earlier that what drew me to the Thor comics was how human the characters got to be in the Marvel runs. Baldur in the comics. So in the comics, the Asgardians actually fight the Celestials, who are responsible for making the X-Men, the Inhumans, screwing around with humanity. And what ends up happening is Thor's able, I think, to gather the energy from the Celestials, and he gives it to Odin, who's able to resurrect the Asgardians. And so what ends up happening is Baldur, much like mythology, is destined to come back. Baldur's revived in the comics and is riddled with trauma from having memories of his own death.
Being trapped in hell.
Yeah, I really do. Going back to all of the stories in like the Northern European mythologies, they just generated trauma. They rapid milled that shit out because there was no foresight for like, how is this going to affect their psyche? They're like, fuck them, keep going. You know, I keep thinking like these stories are so traumatic. These stories are so like, it's just it reflects such a very hard people, like a very different way of doing things. You know, like what do you got to go deal with? We got deer over there, like in Southern Europe. What do you got? You got deer. They might be dangerous. Maybe a wolf. We're fighting bears. We're 6 years old. We're fighting bears in Norway. Oh shit! Like, what do you got to do? And I don't see the sun for 6 months.
I probably discussed Leviathan before, and the concept, I think it was...
That should be our next topic. Ooh. We should talk about Jormungandr and Leviathan and all of that shit, because that's one of my favorites.
This is a little different. This is a premise on the social contract and the idea that bellum omnium para omnes, the idea of the war of all against all and everybody just taking what they want through force, makes life brutish and short.
Do that again really slowly, because you just went through that like we were supposed to know what the fuck you were talking about.
Okay.
I'm going to stop you on that one before you even waste our time. I have seen that on YouTube. It's called The Ultimate Showdown, Ultimate Destiny, and Mr. Rogers won it. So there, solved all of the stuff.
Because we all know Mr. Rogers could lift Mjolnir. So
so the philosopher Thomas Hobbes wrote a book called Leviathan. The full title is Leviathan, or the Matter, Form, and Power of a Commonwealth Ecclesiastical and Civil, and the book covers the main idea of the social contract, which is the idea that we all are in this together.
Look at that, you made Ben walk off.
I needed to be, screw this, I need a beer.
Oh my god, his library's got to be so boring, I'm out.
So
you used a lot of big words in a really short amount of time. I needed a reload.
All right.
Timing was amazing on
The
that
English. As soon as they got the printing press, they just churn these words out, right?
Yeah.
So the idea
Like, we need to make a way to make people feel dumb in a new way. Big words, got it, out.
Primitive society has a concept called the war of all against all.
Right.
And Hobbes writes it in Latin. So he writes it bellum omnium para omnes, the war of all against all. And the idea is that in primitive society, I hit you with a bigger stick because my stick is bigger. I want your food, so I take it from you. I want your land, so we fight over it. And if everybody is just using force to get what they want, nobody benefits. Like,
right.
Brutish and short. It's the Dark Ages. I mean, that's what happened.
But you got to remember, there wasn't a lot of foresight in those times. Like in those times, it was you lived, and the furthest you thought out was like, it's going to get cold. Am I going to be able to eat? And you don't sit there and you're like,
it's like the whole like kill or be killed sort of thing,
right?
Absolutely.
But when your life is, nobody's like, hey, what's your retirement plan look like? There was absolutely no MLM insurance, financial planner shit of like how you're going to deal with yourself. There's not a dude knocking on your door being like, have you saved $1 million for your retirement? Do you have enough life insurance that something happened to you?
Sigurd, my friend, what is your 401k?
I mean, you didn't know if you were going to make it through. You didn't know if you were going to make it through the next winter, let alone like the next
You're like, listen,
to old age.
You're like, listen, fucker, I've got six furs, and I've got 7 kids. Like, one of them's freezing to death, so maybe you should go fuck yourself and bring me a beer.
A little bit.
It's 8800, 8900. They're raiding monasteries on the English coast and all that.
Right. There was a rapid change in England at the time, too, as they were like, that's when the Romantic influence and the change from Old English to Middle English, like that was massive in the way that they were doing. And I think England became an actual, like unified nation, like 1250 or 1150 when they signed up. Isn't it the Magna Carta? I don't remember the detail of it.
That's Charlemagne. Yeah.
Is that? Yeah.
So that's like the remnants of the Romans. So what's funny is the birth of England also ties into the idea of the Vikings leaving the war of all against all. Because right now, the mythology that we're reading about is reflecting their violent, brutish, short lives and their existence is reflected in Ragnarok and these gods who are killing each other and all this violence. They invade Paris. The Norse come down, they invade Paris. Count Odo gives them silver and then gives them the land that we now call present-day Normandy. Mm-hmm. And says, here, just take it, just stop assaulting Paris, which at the time I think had a lot of wood. Mm-hmm. And so Normandy, Normand, Northmen. It was the idea of like, this is the north of France. The Northmen live here. Let's give them the land. It's not arable. It's rocky. They'll take it. And so the Norse are like, hey, we have warm beds.
Your winter's only 2 months here? Fuck yeah.
Your winter is mild. There's all these Christian women. We have money.
No bears.
This land compared to Scandinavia is actually very flat for us to grow things. And so what ends up happening is the Normans, the Northmen, mm-hmm. are an amalgamation of the Norse Vikings and the Christian French. They intermingle. They become this people from these two cultures. William the Conqueror, is a Norman by lineage, and he goes up into England in the Battle of Hastings. I think it's 1066. Defeats Harold Hardrada and becomes the King of England. Mm-hmm. So the descendants of those Christianized Northmen that decided to stay in Europe, grow some crops. Raise some sheep, maybe not attack everyone around us. And of course, there's plenty of war. It is the Middle Ages, but they are relatively civilized. Remember, when the Normans ruled England, there was a general sense of jealousy and mistrust because all of the Anglo-Saxon women were like, hey, these Normans...
They're over 6 feet tall.
They're over 6 feet tall. They bathe... they
did have crazy good hygiene prepared.
God, like these Normans, they use perfume in their hair. They comb their beards.
Yeah,
these guys are hot. And so compared to the Anglo-Saxons, the Normans were the ones that brought the civilization in, and their influence led to the creation of Middle English. that amalgamation of French and Norse mixed, and you get the English language from the influence of William the Conqueror. So it's crazy to me that this pillaging and raping and burning and this idea of the ultra-violent Viking ends up becoming the throne of England and the Plantagenet dynasty for centuries from that Norse influence. And you can see their faith going from the Norse faith to Christianity. You see their belief system morph with the idea of life being longer and life can be relatively more peaceful, and we don't have to control everything. It's almost like our belief system that helps us deal with the stress of life grows with this civilization.
There is a change. There is something that is funny. Was like we do look as Christians more not modern Christians because we're fucking all over the place, but like the kind where like God and the devil were like legitimate puppet masters, where he's like, "You are going to do what I say today," and the devil's like, "You're going to get fucked." No, you're not. And like they're just moving you around on the chessboard. Like. And it does get like, what's my next move? What is going to happen to me next? How do I deal with this? As opposed to this seemed like in the moment, rapid knee jerk reaction of how to survive.
Yeah.
That was up in like the harsher climates. I think like one of the journeys to just go into the harshest climate and see if their belief structure travels is to kind of like take a journey into the like romantic Pantheon, like they're not romantic, the Russian Pantheon, and look into like the gods of like places like Siberia,
Russian,
and see what that would be like.
Yeah,
the pre Christian.
Because I know nothing about them, but every time you hear the guy's like, "What did he do?" He like uprooted mountains and like
he
got hammered.
Bed.
Yeah.
The Orthodox.
Like, fuck bear. You fuck bear.
No, did not think so. Now have more vodka.
So. You ever tag team 6 bears same time, 4 bottles vodka? I do. It's called Tuesday.
Oh my god!
Yeah, holy shit!
I was trying to class out the joint.
We're not classy people here, Brendan. You should know that by now.
You're throwing your Latin around, you snooty bitch.
Well,
we got bear fuckers here.
Don't worry, because if you're talking Russia, you go Greek. The reason why it's the Russian Orthodox Church is because they were Christianized by Greek missionaries, which is why the Cyrillic alphabet, the Russian language, uses Greek characters, because they were influenced by Greek.
So like backdoor bear.
Yes. Backdoor bears. Yes.
Backdoor the bear.
But yeah, the Great Schism.
I apologize to all Greek listeners. I hope Bobby's listening because he personally will hit that. Who'll be like, damn you, Joel.
Apologizes to the Greek, but not to the Russians. But
absolutely.
But yeah, the Great Schism even influenced the way culture advanced differently as it spread throughout.
Yeah.
And that's my extra dry history here.
Yeah,
I wasn't dry. That's why we're here.
Yeah, you're like, as you have your martini, while the rest of us are just swigging it straight from the bottle. You classy bitch.
In my bathrobe with swirling my port, right?
Yes, well, anyway, you should know that the Normans were the North.
Ben's drinking his beer, and I'm essentially just like digging in the garbage, being like,
Greetings on another week of Nerds of Legend.
Greetings.
That's how you should do all of your intros from now on.
Greetings and salutations.
And then I'm coming, how y'all doing?
How y'all doing today?
I'm ready.
We're going to talk about some gods.
Yeah. Fuck you, Brendan.
Well, don't worry. I'm coming down to earth because I'm trying to open this pistachio with a spoon.
Oh, is that what it is? That's what it is. That's how you connect with the masses, is bringing the wrong eating utensil to open something. You're like, all the poors and uneducated.
Just hit it like a rock, like a fucking real man.
Excuse me.
I would have just eaten the container.
I will put these two in my table vise. Thank you.
Oh, is that what you're gonna do?
Yes.
He's like, my tool's on a bench. Connection complete. They've accepted me as one of their own.
We got to put that workshop on camera one of these days. Get some tabletop games onto the stream.
Oh yeah, it's gonna happen.
That would be fun. So I would like to propose next week We're going to obviously be continuing on the Norse Pantheon because it's such a fun story. Mm-hmm. The stories are great, especially the way they've changed from year to year, place to place, retelling to retelling. Because in no place is Thor a beautiful man who is like super articulate and wooing astrophysicists from wherever the fuck Jodie Foster's from.
He's a fat, bearded man with a very scraggly beard,
and he's barely sober. Yeah. Like literally. It's amazing. So I am.
Did you say Jodie Foster?
Jodie Foster, Jane Foster. Fuck you. You know somebody's named Foster. It's Australian for beer.
Jane Foster.
But yeah, Jane Foster. My bad.
But sure, also as a VP in the morning. I'll stop.
Mind you, before this stream, I woke up at 4:45 and I was up with Elizabeth until 1 p.m. From working third shift. So the fact that I feel I'm doing all right. So stop your judgy shit, Brendan.
I mean, I got a dress shirt on, and I'm cracking pistachios. It's tough to turn off.
The height of elegance, right?
Yeah,
there.
and I got a flannel and I'm cracking beers. So fuck off.
All that. I got that Baldur privilege, you know.
Is that what it is? So
where's my boat, Ben?
Yeah, Ben, fuck you. You're supposed to be bringing
am I Loki now?
Sure.
Okay.
So, I love the stories. I love the way that they move and change with like each retelling and each region as that new influence comes in, the stories adapt. What do you want to say? You want to keep going through the Pantheon or?
I would like to go into the stories, and I would propose Thor and Loki's meeting with Loki in the land beyond.
Ooh, that's a very tight story.
Loki? Is that like?
Yeah, he's a giant sorcerer.
He's Utgard Loki, maybe.
Yeah. Is that how it's pronounced? I always thought it was Utgard Loki. Okay. Yeah.
Is that like Godzilla and Mechagodzilla and like Superman?
No. Actually, it was just a common name. It was just a common name at the time. So Loki was just a common name.
We're not going to get into it, but it's basically like the Loki's mirror to. It's like basically like one of the first times where Thor like takes a loss.
Utgard Loki is
Utgard Loki, which is basically
not getting that shit right.
They go to they go to the land beyond, or
not even gonna try it.
Yeah, the land beyond the land beyond the endless sea, which is basically Jotunheim, and they meet with like the king of the stone giants.
This is the start of Thor the movie. I've seen it.
Sure.
And then they all fight.
Not the same thing, but sure.
Yeah, exactly the same.
Yeah, I think it's a really good, really tight story, and like Loki and Thor get like their fucking like bell rung. So
I've seen that, good. And then he has to use Mjolnir to fly through the mouth of that giant ice dog thing. Yep, seen it. It's awesome. And then Odin has to appear in Sleipnir and wave his spear around.
I've seen it. Totally doesn't happen the way you're talking about, but okay.
It does. I've seen it. I saw it in theaters.
All right.
Pretty great. No, that's a great story. That's what we're going to talk about. Loki, Thor and Loki, and Utgard Loki. Mm-hmm. Doesn't he appear a shitload of time? We'll talk about this next week. We're getting into our full jabber mode.
Are we still meeting on Thursday?
So we will meet on Thursday. Sorry for the... I forgot to announce that we were not going to meet last Thursday because I had a test that I needed to study for, and I was overwhelmed, so I couldn't prep properly. So,
but hey, grad school, that's where it's at.
Yeah, that shit's hard. No lie. I remember mine. That shit was no joke.
What it is. So
yeah, and you get in there being like, it's not going to be that bad. I can balance it.
It's just one class. I'll be fine.
One class.
No,
I took 4 in undergrad. It was easy.
Yeah.
And then you get there and you're just like, this one class has 77 chapters to read for the next day. What? They're like, assignment 1, build a human. Okay, it's due on Friday. You're like, it's Wednesday.
Yeah.
Joel, that's easier.
That's my life currently. Yeah. So,
do you know what ionic thrusters are? I want you to build 7 of them and your own craft and drive it to class.
Yep.
But by when? Wednesday. It's Monday.
Yep.
Well, better get on it. Mm-hmm. It's 77% of your grade. Goodbye.
Yeah.
You're like, fuck you.
So
Take
that
100% off for every minute you're late.
and I don't have a test this week, so we're gonna do some more Dungeons and Dragons on Thursday, and then we will continue going through the Red Rising series on Monday. So,
Yes. Yes, so.
So, thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you again on Thursday.
Yes.